Well, hello and welcome to the SJ Child Show, as well as we have kind of a dual purpose show today. This is Christy. Christy, you introduce yourself and your show.
What's up? My name is Christy Ann. I am host of the Sociocultural podcast, Perceptionists Anonymous. I do a lot of things. Everything over the last 3 years of my show, I've covered everything from ancient spiritualities to metaphysics to personality disorders to anarchist philosophy and neo-Marxism. I don't know. I've covered a lot of things, and I think I don't know, anything that interests me that I think helps other people look at the world a little differently.
Isn't that great? I love to do the same. I mean, my show is about bringing education and resources to families, a lot about neurodivergency and how we can better support and accommodate and change our world's thinking, our stigmas and ideas of things that aren't necessary for our current culture.
It's amazing. I mean, that's really, what a time to be alive. And this is something, I mean, anyone's listened to my show for any amount of time, I think I probably say that all the time. I'm just like, wow, we really just picked a very particular piece of history to be a part of, in terms of certain renaissances that are occurring and certain revelations and certain reconstructionings. And I really appreciate the work that you do. And I think that, I mean, I can't wait to see what other progress that you make in the works of what you're doing and what areas continue to exceed expectations and where we're going to go for the human race, I guess.
Agreed. And I love that we both are a part of it and are able to be, independent in our voices and use our platforms to really have passion and share our message and what we believe in. And I think that comes with a sense of courage and bravery that may not, everybody's not going to agree or like your topics or even, like you, maybe me personally, but
I like symbolic interactionism. Like, I don't know, girl. Like maybe go back to some of the, the easy stuff, and I'm like, yeah, eventually.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really important that we don't sit by and watch things go, that we are engaged. And not only that, for my show and my purpose is a lot of how to guide our children and how to really help them to be a better future for our society.
That's amazing. Honestly, I just turned 30 and I do not have any children, and I don't know if that's kind of my direction in life. And so I've been, as I get older, I just look at like my best friend and her interaction with her child. I just saw her for the second time in like 5 years. We happened in Northern California at the same time. I'm in for Seattle and I'm like, dude, perfect. I'll drive an hour and a half to see you. And I'm watching her interact with her child. And I'm like, and I'm thinking about the work that you do and some other women I know that have children. And it's just really, I mean, that is honorable work, man. And that is, I don't even know necessarily what all that takes. And like, in addition, for you to be such an advocate and to be to have such a message and to be, I mean, it is pretty lucky to have the chance to have something into your life that means so much to you that you are able to let it push you,
Yeah, absolutely. And with, where it comes with us is that our son was diagnosed about 10 years ago. And when he was only 16 months old, and about 6 years later, I recognized, oh my gosh, this is my husband twofold right here. And so I approached him and said, I'm certain that you have Asperger's, that you definitely are on the spectrum. And he embraced it wholeheartedly and looked at it and said, this makes so much sense for me. And this is so good for my interactions moving forward so that I can kind of analyze, because that's who he is, the analytical, and so now he's being able to analyze his own self. But not only that, him and I together as a team, as a parenting team, have been able to give our kids the same accommodations that he gets or that, we make for each other. And it's made such a huge difference in the parenting style that we were provided with versus the one that we provide our children.
Wow. I mean, what I'm just so blown away by how, like, obviously I think a lot of the transition in our society and our culture, and I mean, I can only really speak from, West Coast United States, really, I guess a little from the South, but that's different. That was a different part of my life. What benefits that have come from our technology and the fact that we have so much information. And I mean, that has created a mess in and of itself. But the fact that we have been blessed with the chance to see our entire civilization just skyrocket in all these different areas, but in terms of like our ability to educate ourselves and our ability to retrain ourselves and reparent ourselves and reparent our children and like really break those lineages that have been passed down. And I'm like super proud of our generations, man. Like, I'm like, it's awesome. I'm just so proud to see a lot of the transitions that are occurring, but it's not easy work. It's really not easy work. And I mean, I don't know, it's hard to get out of our heads, at least for myself, that's a lot of what my show is getting out of my head and getting into all the details. So maybe I can bring enlightenment to someone else that's like, damn, dude, I don't know. It's just all I think about too. So.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think it's so important. And, what I love to do is have guests on kind of the same as you love to interview and show the world like these type of people that you look up to, these Hollywood producers, these, authors and just amazing individuals, models and actresses and all of these types of people, they can all be neurodivergent, and the world doesn't it now is taking this big turn where it's like, oh my gosh, let's celebrate this more. Let's, give these outside the box type of thinkers more of a spotlight and show the world that neurodiversity comes with challenges, but it's not like, it shouldn't be hidden away like it used to be in the days of mental health crisis kind of ideas.
Days of yore.
Yes. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, it's so I guess, and this is where my like analytical brain comes in. And I mean, I was recently, I don't know, this is something, so I've been really looking forward to learning a lot of like around your experience and understanding and observance of autism and of other levels of neurodivergence. I mean, I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and I find I'm really compassionate, particularly towards women in terms of neurodivergence as well, because we are excruciatingly diagnosed with mood disorders.
Yes.
And I mean, we probably have them. I mean, I have them, that's for sure. And that's been something that I've dealt with, but a lot of it's like triggered me to research more things and to like progress further and to be like, okay, so how do these things manifest differently in different genders, in different circumstances and different, like whatever skills you've been taught and stuff. And so the idea of neurodivergence is interesting. And I mean, it's a sexy word. That's a sexy word. It sounds cool. It sounds intriguing. And I think that it brings a bit of levity to a situation that didn't used to be like that. And then there's kind of like the dual side coin of like, everyone is different and everyone's got our struggles. And I just really, there's certain things that get overused too. And that's kind of something that I get a little iffy of, and I really, just people that could really use the help. I mean, everyone can use help. I don't know. I guess I'm like arguing with myself back and forth right now. No, because everyone can use help at the same time. It's like, okay, but there's certain words like trauma or empath that get overused. And I think that's
drama queen, right?
Right. And that needs, I mean, as a tarot reader, oh my God, I've got very specific with some of these words. And I don't know. It's interesting where we are headed, and I look forward to seeing what other progress comes with it. Yeah. I don't know, and where else it integrates, but
I was listening to it was like the top 20 autism, leaders of 20 22 or whatever it was. And it was so interesting the whole time because they only used autism autism spectrum. And I loved that. I love that they threw away the word disorder, got rid of that old D that we didn't need. And just, this is something we need to recognize as a society as a neurotype and not a behavioral crisis. And I think that that's becoming more apparent with a lot of education and TV shows, kind of things like that are coming out. It's probably like an old word to say, but
maybe I was like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. I was like, that's interesting. It's like I'm going to look those up.
And it's so, it's just really good to know that our world is trying to create sensitivity around these types of areas, situations. It's just really important for inclusion, especially for kids. I love to advocate for the kids and for the children because they, number one, deserve it. They need it. One of my favorite little quotes is, a little bit of knowledge can turn fear into understanding. And that's so important when we arm our school kids with knowledge of neurodiversities and how to support their peers rather than, how to create bullying situations.
Man, I mean, and thank you for bringing up the idea of behavioral health or behavioral like disorder, quote unquote, because that is like, that's where it all comes to the surface, like everything looks like a behavioral issue. And so I have this like mixed idea of behavioral issues because there are some things, I've seen and I've experienced like a lot of boys get diagnosed with the more behavioral. And then once again, girls get diagnosed with this like emotional erraticism or instability, and it's like, I guess a lot of my experience of neurodivergence is in the field of ADHD and like where that, like the different types of it and the different ways that it can manifest. And like, I find it so interesting that, the idea of hyperactivity can be so different than we freaking it is. I mean, like it can show up as anxiety. It can show up as depression. It can show up literally as like the opposite of hyperactivity. And it can show up as like a freeze response, I've experienced that many times, like being on stage at some point and it's like, I can't remember a single thing and that's like, maybe that's a particular quirk I have though, so like, that's something I'm working on, I think, but, I don't know. I really honor the work that you do for children advocacy. I don't know. It seems really, there's just a really profound level of work. And I really honor that you're able to do that. I think I primarily am in the realm of like research and then kind of like I'm really intuitive. And I do channel. And so that's a lot of where my stuff comes from, is using my openness in that area to let my brain kind of create these connections, but I have to kind of talk through it. Yeah. So that's why podcasting's like spot on.
I love it.
Or in the beginning, I'm like, I've done this for years and I'm like still a little nervous, and by the end I'm like, oh my God, we ran out of time and I've just covered the surface of it. Okay. I guess I'll see you guys next week,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's so awesome. And I love podcasting for that purpose too. And, I wanted to jump back and say that about probably 10 to 12 weeks ago, my 10-year-old daughter was diagnosed ADHD, autism, dyslexia. And maybe it's 4 months ago now or something. And here I've been like, once again, seeing this man that I'm married to we've been together for 18 years. So I've literally been looking at it for 18 years, and then our son, now our daughter, and our oldest, who is my stepdaughter, is 22 and we've discussed it many, many times. And just like you were talking about before, we spent 13 years in therapy sessions, 3 times a week or whatever, to no avail, never a diagnosis, not even a mood disorder diagnosis. It was just this constant unknown. it's so hard. And so now I'm like, girl, you need to look into this. And so I think that she feels that way. And now in her relationship, she kind of gives that disclaimer, which I think is appropriate for her own support. But at the same time, it's also made this complete full circle. And I'll have to tell you after I find out, but I'm actually going to go get tested Monday. And have my own, testing done, because I really feel, obviously now my husband's like, I see you. And like all the checks, now he's bringing me the checklist. Right. And we're able to say, okay, this is why I can understand this so much. This might be why, these types of things, have been able to be masked for so many years so well.
Yep.
It's incredible. This self journey is never ending, right?
If we're lucky, if we're lucky, I mean, at least I think like I've always kind of made jokes. I'm like, thank God I am too smart for my own good, because I have been able to like watch myself and like ask myself questions and like, and I, up until recently. So this is a thing that I'm battling with too, is like, up until recently, I've never necessarily considered myself on the autism spectrum or neurodivergent. And then now, once you have this more education, it's like we can start seeing it in almost every area. And that's why this spectrum is so important. I think that it's spot on, and it is so cool. It's such a cool thing that we're able to like recognize and then to integrate into our society. And I think that in terms of like masking you're talking about, I'm like, dude, I have memories of being like 5 years old, one of my earliest memories. And I'm in kindergarten, I'm making these crazy elaborate geometric shapes with these like little like flower creation, big things, like flower of life stuff. And I remember this kid running by me, and he stepped on it. And I remember him stopping and looking at me and he was like, I am so sorry. And I remember like viscerally being 5 and looking at him going, oh my God, look at all of his emotion. Wow, he really feels bad. How interesting. And it's so weird to like, really, I'm 30 and I'm like, dude, what an inquisitive little child being like, wow, let's talk about why do you have all this emotion for it? And it's like, yeah, that's a trait. That's for sure. Like you're able to have that level of inquisition, as opposed to just like being more in, just not even questioning it,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really grateful for your children, for them to have you. I mean, what a relief for them. What good karma for them.
Right. Thank you. I love that you said that too. I was an only child. My divorced parents when I was 8, under 10. So when I view back my childhood and relationships and things, everything is a bit scattered and, doesn't make a cohesive, like nice little, but all of my life, I just was like, okay, how could I achieve what I don't know exists, or how could I find, and I don't know how it happened. Let's just call it good karma, I guess. But, I was, met my husband, and it's every day. He's my best friend. I want to spend all the time with him. And there's nobody else that I would want to, other than my children, be on this. And it's almost like an island because other family member doesn't quite understand the level of different levels of support needed for each individual person. And that's something that we've really dove deep into with their eating habits, their sleeping cycles. And it looks very unusual to others, but it works so good for us. And it is just so successful. And I kind of have been calling it bio parenting. And I think, right. And it's kind of, and mindful parenting, I think, at that, because it's not like I'm stepping away and saying, okay, I'm doing like a hands-off approach, but I'm allowing my kids to have and live off their own independent biological systems and needs and desires and requirements, which then frees up all of this like fighting bedtimes and fighting dinner times and fighting what they're going to eat. And, it's like this wasted energy that was put on me and so many others for so long, that has just become this, idea that they are healthy. They eat only the amount that they need. They go to sleep when their body is tired, and they wake up when they've had enough sleep. And there aren't requirements for them to live in a 9-to-5 schedule,
Are they, do you homeschool them, or are they
I
in
do.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that makes it I guess, and that's the thing, is that I know that people, say, oh, that's just crazy. That's crazy looking. Let me tell you, it's been 10 years of sacrifices, 10 years of sacrificing my own careers, my, own, and now it's all coming, full circle, because I have so many amazing opportunities that now the kids are older, they're 10 and 12. They're able to more take care of themselves during nighttime things, things like that. So, but it's not to say that there aren't still challenges. Like, if it's a weekend and we want to go for a drive and one kid doesn't wake up till 4 p.m., guess what? We have to wait till 4 p.m. to go somewhere. But it's not like we, I don't know. It's just very like fluid. It feels very chaotic probably to others, but for us, it's just very fluid, and just really go with the flow here.
I mean, I think that's a lot of like, in terms of, I mean, it's a little bit different, but the idea of flow state, that's something recognizing is such a, I mean, humans are so interesting. We're just so like, we just have such incredible capacity for everything. Like there's no way we're ever going to be able to come up with a computer that can compute the amount of information that a human takes in and transmutes. And we don't even realize that we take in. And I think that this is a really good step towards recognizing the full capacity of human experience. And that's pretty incredible. I mean, that's a lot. Once again, I mean, from an outsider woman looking at another woman who's raising these children, it's just, to me, it's just, I'm in awe, it just seems so like, it's just such a work of art, I guess. That's a weird way to put it.
Oh, I love that. I think so, the same way. I think that watching them, supporting them in their strengths, and really, I talk a lot about in a lot of my shows, building their challenges with their strengths. If your kid loves to play Minecraft, teach them how to do multiplication tables, like by building Minecraft tables. Like, right? There's so many ways that we can integrate our children's interests into their learning styles. And, for us with our son, we knew right away, he was reading at 1, he was writing at 2, and at 3, yeah. I don't know. I guess we didn't even share that info. Oh my gosh. At 3, we realized he had a photographic memory, and I just basically started showing him maps of the US, maps of the world, anatomy charts, the periodic table. I love education. I think that having more is more. So, I just was constantly giving him all of this information. And now he's 12. He can, with autism, he is he needs more support than anyone else in the family, as far as their diagnosis goes. And so for him at the very beginning, it was very quote unquote classic autism with spinning and nonverbal. He would not make eye contact, flapping, spinning, just everything constant. And it was doing a lot of research, like you said, and realizing for us, diet changes came into play that changed everything, that created speech and decreased all the stimming. And it came in the form of realizing, and of course, I'm not a medical professional, and I only did this on my own experience. And so it's very anecdotal information, but it was casein and gluten removal. And within maybe a 4-month period of one another was removed from his diet, and he started speaking, and then he was 4. And so now he's like communicated for 2 years in writing. And now finally I hear his voice, and he can speak all of these words that he knows already. And, all the states that he's learned, and all of the periodic tables, and all of the great stuff that he can finally get out and talk about. And now today he, although is still working on his communication, he can identify by sound, writing, and probably speech back to him 109 languages.
I was just gonna say, I was waiting for you to say it.
Yeah. He, has, the funny thing is that time where I kind of brought the information to my husband about himself was when my son was being tested. He was having his, we wanted an IQ test, but what we received was what his working memory was at the time, which is 99%. Yeah.
That's something I'll have to look into. I don't think I've ever even researched that much. Wow. How interesting.
Yeah. And so with that though, at the time I want to say he was 8 years old. He was completing a sophomore level of math test. And so today I couldn't honestly tell you what level of like math he's on, but with that, and going back to what kind of started this originally was that homeschool, was that the option to go to school was fantastic for preschool and kindergarten. And I was even lucky enough to have preschoolers and kindergarten teachers that did algebra with him and did these advanced things with him. But then when he got into first grade, it was done. It was over. They didn't want to make the accommodations necessary anymore. They shuffled him around. He ended eloping school at 6 years old and went to a busy road, and a parent found him and took him back to the school. And at that point, we were just like, you don't have another chance to lose our child. So brought him home, and we've, been, and it's like online school. So it's accredited. It has a curriculum to follow and everything. Right. They send us all the like books and things. So it's been really nice to have those, guidelines to follow. And then of course, when COVID hit, we bring our daughter back home to homeschool her. And so she may or may not go back to school next year, depending on, just how it looks and how she feels about it. And it was in bringing her home that we were able to address and get help for her dyslexia. The school system was, again, like unwilling to take a look at that due to the fact that she was friendly, outgoing, seemed like, how could she have dyslexia? And and I was like, when she got home, and I'm like, okay, she's writing these letters backwards. She's struggling in her reading, and she's, getting behind. And so luckily with the online school that they'd worked with my son and I for so long, they just said, yes, come, we'll get her tutoring. We'll get her the help she needs. And now she's thriving in reading. So it just takes some dedication.
I mean, that's something that I like. Good for you. Oh, wow. So I have a spam trying to call.
Oh, dang it.
So how old is your daughter?
10.
10. Okay. Gotcha. And how old, and your son's 12 now, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Gotcha. Yeah, that's really interesting. It like earlier, I'm listening to you talk about, all the different I mean, just the different ways that you are actively accommodating, and it almost brought tears to my eyes, because I'm like, man, all like the poor kids, like up until this point in history, they never received it. I mean, my father was diagnosed as autistic, and so that's where I was like, all right, Christy, it's time. We should. All right, I see some stuff, like being able to step outside and be like, this is a little, this is off. And so I don't know too much about it. So I'm kind of curious of what the diagnostic criteria of it is, or like what's your ideas around like what characteristics the autism spectrum brings up?
Oh gosh. And I mean, it's so individualized, right? I guess I could say like a million things because it covers so many different people, but I can tell you what it looks like exactly in my family. And what better way, right? I won't assume what it looks like for anyone else. But for our son, like I said, it was obvious. The pediatrician saw it at 16 months. It was like the no eye contact, spinning, flapping, hadn't made verbal communication. But our daughter, who, is only 2 years younger than him. Wow. Her entrance into the world was just like her, a firecracker. Like she's full of spunk and just like determination. I don't know if it's just a Capricorn thing or like I kind of teased her about that.
Yeah.
and she's very analytical. She's just very she's very street smart. She's only 10, right? But she's just she just has like this air, this old soul about her. But in fact, it's great because we were just looking through a bunch of photos yesterday from baby on up to 10. And so I can literally see the obsession with dolls. I mean, she had to have a new doll from the little toy aisle, just even the $2 or $3 ones from Smith's, in that, they're just like this big. Every time we went to the store, she had to get a new doll. And people don't notice that as anything different than a girl liking dolls. That also, she had these other small obsessions, shoes. I mean, the second she could put a shoe on, she wore everybody's shoes all the time. She always had shoes on, different shoes all the time. Wow. And just these interesting, aspects to herself. She spoke extremely quickly and in very like well-mannered and well-versed ways of speaking for a child. At the same time, we laugh and look back at the ways our son spoke in very like puzzled words, it was unknown some of the times when he was speaking. He used a lot of terms that didn't make sense, that we had to uncover the meaning of. And then we realized, well, she did that too. But it was so cute that we didn't recognize it as the same thing.
Right. Oh my God. That's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
She's just being being funny or something.
Yeah, exactly. Because
disconnect.
Wow. Yeah. He would say, he had this one phrase that he said for so long and we had no idea what he was saying. And that was, don't use the steel. Don't use the steel. And anytime anybody said no, or don't use the steel, he would yell. And we were just like, what in the heck? Like, what does this even mean? She would say, it's warm inside. No, yeah, it's warm inside, which meant something was cold. But instead of thinking of it like his kind of speaking, like just like you said, oh, how cute. That's so funny that she would say things like that. It's warm inside. And that meant that it was cold, whatever, even like a popsicle in her hand. She'd say that it's warm inside. We'd know that meant something was cold. But of course, now when you say it and you look at it, it's just like, well, that's obvious, but not to us then, it was just her being quirky and cute.
Yeah, there's no way we could blame you. I mean, that evokes a lot of kind of interesting emotion thinking about. I'm like, okay, so when she gets older, she could probably be like a legit rocket scientist if she has this idea of this correlation between hot and cold and the inversion of it. Like that's where my freaking brain goes. I mean,
right. Well, she's really good. Like right away, I think she was 5 years old when she sewed her first shirt and her first pillow and doll clothes. She would just pick up fabric and socks and cut. I mean, don't trust me with scissors, 45 years old, and I cannot cut a straight line. Do not put scissors in my hand. I should have been held back from kindergarten. But she's incredible. She has this vision of what it's going to become. I don't have that for clothes, I guess, for designing and things like that. But it's something definitely she has this amazing eye for design, interior design, clothing design, just like amazing taste. I don't know. It's crazy.
Wow, that's a really strong level of abstraction. I mean, I think that's a really particularly good example of the strengths that can come from this thing. Like, it's almost like a level of this superhuman ability to be able to have this ability. And like, it's not even like it's an ability and it's a struggle, you know, to see so far outside the box. I mean, particularly, I mean, I know at least in terms of my experience, I don't like when we spoke at the Women of Indie Pods United podcast, I spent literally like 2 weeks, like preparing like 7 half TED Talks on like, what am I going to cover? Like, what am I going to talk about? And everyone's like, I think you're overthinking it. And I was like, why does this keep happening? I was like, how you can't tell. Like, if you're an overthinker, quote unquote, you can't, like, I was making myself laugh. I was like, it's not like there's this freaking toll booth that like, once you pass it, it's like, okay, you've passed go, now collect 6 more anxieties around whatever it is you're trying to come up with. And so it can be this really great ability to use this ability to look outside the box, but to not even realize you're looking outside the box because you don't even see the box, and you're trying to constantly communicate and you're trying to constantly relate and feel a part of this human experience with other people. And even now I'm like, to what extent does my brain think that differently? And I mean, I watch my partner, and I think my partner, he's got a lot of similar issues in terms of the dyslexia. And I see some of the, like, using our ability to analyze to compensate for emotional distress, which I mean, just means like, yeah, well, thank God. I mean, what's the other option? You know, just being totally overcome with emotion and totally overcome with frustration, which I think, I don't know if maybe your children have experienced that, you know, but I think because I think that falls under some of the spectrum categories, right?
Yeah.
Or characteristics.
So. And that's definitely something we're constantly strategizing on how to help them, because, you know, even having happy success and all of that, it doesn't come without challenges. It doesn't mean that they don't have meltdowns and they don't have autism. And we're just able, you know, for my husband, it's interesting because when we're able to look at perspective, we can see, well, with my husband, he was in the juvenile detention system. He was criminally looked at, you know, his autism traits were punished, and he was, you know, locked up for, and all of these other things that it's a whole nother story to do, right? On that kind of a system, and how to bring more awareness and kind of shine a light on how to help those kids out. But yeah, right. And it's so crazy now that I can be like, okay, well, even though our son might have these incredible meltdowns or whatever, my husband received, you know, years and years of therapy and all of this training and everything, that instead of putting aside, he turned within and grew and really became just the kind of father, I mean, I'm assuming he would want his children to have, you know, just someone that is trusting and loving and supportive and sensitive, but a strong father figure that, you know, is I don't know, he's amazing. So they have this wonderful balance of parents who believe in them, which I think is a huge, huge part. We don't expect them to be adults. We want them to be kids. And I think that a lot of people lose their sense of perception and identity with their kids when they expect adult behavior or adult what's the word I'm looking for?
Responses, I guess.
Thank you. Exactly what I'm saying. So it's really interesting, but yeah, I'm really lucky to have this journey to be able to share with others and have the platform to be able to share it with, and I wrote children's books to help my community and my children's peers at school better understand them and help support them. And once again, a little bit of knowledge turns that fear into understanding. And now these kids can grow from the power we're going to create around them. So
what was your process of coming up with these books? Because I'm curious, because I mean, as someone, so I'm building up to the point where I'm coming up with a couple different, I'm an educator. I think that's kind of what a lot of where I am at my point in my life, is I'm a researcher, and I have been. And that's something that I recognize at a really young age too, that makes me I'm like, all right, Christy, there's something there, because I remember being left alone at 5 years old. And as soon as my family was gone, I'd go into the encyclopedias and I'd be looking up stuff, but I'd be looking up the Salem witch trials. And because that's a lot of where my background is in Wicca for a moment, but the esoteric, the occult, manifestation, witchcraft, religion studies and stuff like that. That's been something that I've done since I was 5 years old, is actively working energy and that's something that comes really naturally to me. But the research aspect too, I'm dude, little baby Christy, it's hilarious to me. But I'm listening, I'm slowly developing an ability to transition from researcher to educator to coming up with really, that's where the ADHD comes in, is I'm just now able to work with my brain enough and to slow my brain down enough to be able to come up with cohesive projects and translate the information that I have and put it together with okay, because a lot of it's intuitive. It's a lot of intuitive information on as I talk with people, I can work them through things, but to sit down and write a book, I can write it for a minute. I can definitely do it for a minute. I can get 15 and then be all right, I think the momentum is past, and then I'll move forward,
Yeah.
So I'd be curious about your, first off, congratulations on being able to cohesively put together and finish books. And then thought process was on how, what do your books do necessarily?
So I love poetry. And so mine are written in poetic form, and which is also easy with rhyming for children to learn how to read and word association, things like that. There's a book about autism, and it kind of just is really my son's story and how he, how we became more involved in helping him by understanding him rather than trying to change what we thought was necessary, and so that's kind of that book's premises. And it really does give a background. What is autism? What is a meltdown? I have kind of in the back, a parent section to read, to really give the established information to help kids. But I guess it really started with a book for my daughter. I have a physical difference called outer ear microtia. Basically, it just means I have these little teeny tiny little ears.
Wow.
And so we just weren't born with the top half, and it's hereditary in my family, from my mom's side, and both of my children have it. And I didn't want my daughter to feel like she had to go throughout the world hiding herself and being afraid because she was different. Because and I've told the story, on my show before, but I was in my 30s. And when I was young, people used to call me little ears. And that was my nickname, was my difference. And nobody.
Oh, but kind of cute. I mean,
yeah.
oh, but
yeah. Right. And it, at the same time, it's it showed me that even into my 30s, when some adult yelled across the store, "Hey, little ears," and I went, "Oh my gosh, come on."
Not great.
Yeah. And I I was like, I don't want this to be her plight as well, if you will. And so I wrote a book, Anna the Kitten, a book about physical differences, just to show that it's written about cats, the difference, favorite. Right? And how many cats do you know that are the same? None. Right. And so really just being proud of who you are. I also wrote a book about dyslexia, which I'd like to maybe kind of revise because I know a little bit more now and I'm maybe able to update some of the information. Down syndrome, which has been close to me in family and also friends with children with Down syndrome, that I just think it's so necessary to show, the world how to support better. And then anxiety, right? Yeah. I mean, I think the anxiety book is probably, I'll just grab it right here.
Yeah.
One of my favorites, and if not my own personal story of how this poor little worm is so concerned about the robin that's up above on the grass, and also concerned about weather and about a lawnmower and all of the things where he can't move. He's just frozen in anxiety underneath, trying. And so it shows kind of how to try to compose yourself, how to take some deep breaths and slow yourself down. And it just really gives kids, and, I thought it was important to show that it comes in a form of physical pain and physical, it's not just in your mind and your mind racing, but your heart's racing and your breathing is heavy. And kids don't know how to identify what that is, what's happening in their bodies at the time. So I really wanted to help give them that ability to identify that and say, okay, and maybe ask for help. If they know what they need help for, they can be, more interested to get help and support.
You're doing the Lord's work, dude.
Oh, thank you.
Wow. Really. And that little worm face is freaking adorable. I was like, what? Look at how cute it is. Did someone else narrate it? Or
yeah, we have these graphic, a graphic designer produced these, but I will, after the show, I will send you my original sketches on this because they're really cute and it was fun. My husband is a spray paint artist. That's his amazing talents.
Dude, I need that for my partner. I'm going to have to buy one. Oh my God.
They're so cute. And so my husband really helped me in this one. This was our very first one that we published. It wasn't the first one that was written, but it was so sweet that he really helped me to create just something that he also has dyslexia, so he was able to help me understand what was necessary for kids to understand
like on the inside. So what you want to talk a little bit about dyslexia? Because once again, it's something like there's like a really strong, like mainstream idea of what it is. But I know that it can take over so many different areas. Like, what do you know about?
Oh my gosh, not enough. I'll tell you what, I definitely need to get to know more, but just from what I understand and see, with my husband, he's an avid, he used to be an avid reader. So for him, he was able to practice enough reading that when when you get a good book and you can't put it down, he would do that with like an actual author in all of the books in the series, and so, right. But he does do construction, and he does let me know that sometimes like he'll double check his numbers because those numbers are often for him what switch around in his mind. And so he's constantly kind of writing and double checking and making sure of things because he's a perfectionist, of course, and things have to be right. And for my daughter, I really see that the trouble comes in writing. And at this time, maybe this is where I need to work a little bit harder in helping her practice writing more. But since there's so much like text, speech to text and things available, that's how I'm accommodating her in school and in reports or in sentence making, with the school's, permission, and allowing her through her IEP to have that accommodation made for her so that she can get more out of school and less like, I don't know.
Just like gruesome trialing of
exactly.
Right. Do you remember when we were kids and we had those cursive books?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Cursive, like that might be of benefit. I mean, I know she's a little bit older, so it might be like, it probably would have to be like really interesting. It could be poetry.
Exactly. Right.
Like something where it would create like
dinosaur
a muscle
names. That's what it'd have to be.
Oh
that's our current interest.
I'd be like, no, I can't. Oh my God, that's hilarious. That's great though. So something like that might be really at least wise. Wow, dyslexia, dude. I found, so as I get older, I was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy when I was 20. And so something like, and actually that's a weird story about how I figured out what that was. That's some weird metaphysical shit that was gifted to me, I guess. But I'm dealing with this, like, I see certain areas of my brain is changing, and I'm having to kind of keep track of it to make sure like nothing's really wrong with my brain, but I realize as I get older, some things start happening. Like when I was young, I used to be really good at math. Basically, I always joke that I was 3 years ahead of math before I was 3 years behind in math. And I'd started getting, once again, like the behavioral thing, like I got in a lot of trouble too. That was something that was not recognized in my, and I was raised by my grandmother and my uncle in like a guardianship situation. And so there was no knowledge of anything, or no support in terms of like recognition of different traits. It was just like, no, she's just getting in trouble and more trouble. And she's, the meltdown thing. And I was like, and I didn't realize, because, there's kind of a correlation between complex post-traumatic stress and how that can manifest, as well as like, so it's kind of, a lot of things can show up the same way, but have different, like neurological pathways and neurological epistemology or whatever. I think I forgot what I was about to say. Oh yeah. About about like dyslexia and stuff. I found that later on in my life, like only now am I starting to actually really struggle with this. Like I've never had an issue with it up until fairly recently. And I can't my sense of direction is to the point where my partner thinks I'm messing with him when I'm like we've always gotten like arguments about it. Cause I'm like, no, the store is this way. I was like, cause you leave the house and you go right and right. He's like, you are literally the opposite, like distinctly the opposite, to where if I feel like I'm more intuitive than I am better at remembering directions. I can guess better than I can remember.
Yeah.
Numbers, like looking at numbers, and I just can't read them almost. Like it takes me a very long time. And so that's kind of weird. That's something I'm going to have to start like keeping up with, because that's new.
Now, is it because you're in Arizona and there's not a lot of like distinctive lands, like mountains or anything like that?
Arizona's way easier, actually.
Really? Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's so that's why I was like, I kind of was about to get upset, because I was like, no, dude, like I know my way to work. You know what I mean? Like it's the only thing I know how to get to in town. So I know my way to work. And he's like, and to this day, I'm still like that particular situation, I'm still not quite sure he was right, but it's the point where he probably was, to where it's because in Phoenix, everything's laid out on a grid system, and that's like really cool, even though I don't know where it is, I don't know, but at least I know that there could be a system to develop it. Whereas in Orville, California, in the middle of nowhere, there's like 600 people that live in this town of Bangor. And it's like, you can go to a crossroad and make a right or a left, and somehow you end up on the same street in another 15 minutes. It's really bizarre, but with the number thing, like, that, yeah, I don't know where that's coming from, man. I also realized with ADHD, like my memory is so poor. And I was like, I realized a couple of years ago, I was like, I don't think I'm paying attention. I was like, I don't even think I'm here most of the time. Like, I don't know if you know anything about personality typology and Myers-Briggs and stuff. But I am an INFJ. And so I'm in like an ex-NFJ. I'm pretty extroverted, but it changes. But primary cognitive function is introverted intuition. And so it's like living in a brain that almost all the information you take in is almost theoretical pattern building intuitively, and then having to be a regular person with that, and that's weird. That's hard, but
strategizing, right? That's how you learn how to strategize and mask out in public and come up with ways to create, things like that. Oh my gosh, absolutely. It's been so fascinating to talk to you, and I can't wait to dive deep again and really, let's have another discussion and do this again for sure. And really explore, one another's podcasts and things. So before we go, tell us your name of your podcast and everything again.
Awesome. Well, my name is Christy Ann Clark, and I am host of Perceptionists Anonymous. I kind of call it like a support group for overthinkers, essentially. And I cover a lot of things, you guys. So there's you kind of never know what you're getting at. You can find me at perceptionistanonymous.com, or you can find me on social media, on Instagram, at Perceptionists Anonymous. My personal handle is Sailor Awen, SAILOR .AWEN, the Awen being the Druidic symbol of inspiration, which I find creative and funny. That. But so I'm on pretty much everything. Go ahead. I'm on Vocal Media as well. You can find me at Christy Ann Clark there, because I do a lot of writings and I do weekly tarot readings.
Fantastic.
So you can find that on my
this is also going to be aired on your channel. So anybody that's interested in looking at the SJ Child show or getting in touch with me or the books, you can just Google SJ Childs and all of the information will come up for you. So simple as that.
This has been great. This is really look forward to speaking with you more. And I think next time I'll have this is fun because we've never met, we're from the same area, which is pretty freaking cool. But next time, we've got some really cool conversation pieces.
Love it. I can't wait to do that. Thank you so much for your time today, Christy. It's been so much fun. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye, girl.